Imagine waking up to the sound of thunder. Except it isn't the sky. It's 90,000 soldiers crossing the border. Tanks rolling, artillery thundering, a full nation collapsing in days. And the world holding its breath. This is the story of the Korean War, a war many call forgotten, but one that almost ignited World War III. A war where soldiers fought in monsoon mud, scorching heat, an Arctic cold so brutal it froze their eyelids together. A war where the lines on the map changed so fast they called it the Seesaw War. And it all started at dawn on June 25, 1950. The sun had barely risen when North Korean forces poured across the 38th parallel, launching a massive surprise invasion. T-34 tanks crushed through South Korean defenses like paper. City after city fell. Panic swept the population. Refugees fled in endless rivers. The South Korean army? Outnumbered, outgunned, overwhelmed. Within just 3 days, the North captured Seoul. The world stared in shock. President Harry Truman realized something terrifying. If South Korea falls today, tomorrow another country will fall. This is how world wars begin. So the United States and the United Nations acted. For the first time in history, UN nations from Britain, Canada, Turkey, Australia, France, and many more sent forces to save a country from collapse. It wasn't just a Korean war anymore. It was a global stand against communism. But the timing couldn't have been worse. U.S. forces were scattered around the world after World War II. Still, they rushed to Korea, and what they found was chaos. By August 1950, South Korean and UN forces had been pushed into a tiny corner called the Pusan Perimeter. 80% of the country was gone. If Pusan fell, the war was over. Soldiers fought street by street, inch by inch. Supplies ran so low that U.S. troops used empty beer bottles as makeshift grenades. But the defenders held on, just barely. And then came the man who would change everything. General Douglas MacArthur. He proposed something so bold, so insane, that most generals rejected it. MacArthur planned a massive amphibious invasion behind enemy lines at Incheon, a port with extreme tides, narrow channels, and mudflats that could trap ships. It was considered impossible. But on September 15, 1950, the impossible happened. UN forces stormed Incheon, capturing it in hours. North Korean supply lines collapsed. Seoul was liberated. And suddenly, the entire war flipped. The North Korean army was shattered. UN forces surged north, liberating city after city. By November 1950, they reached the banks of the Yalu River, the border with China. Victory seemed guaranteed. But MacArthur boldly claimed the war would be over by Christmas. But he was wrong, terribly wrong, because China had been watching. One freezing night, UN soldiers noticed something strange. Whistling, drums, battle horns. Then suddenly, thousands upon thousands of Chinese soldiers erupted from the mountains. It was a massive unseen force called the Chinese People's Volunteer Army. The attacks were devastating. Night after night, wave after wave. UN forces were forced into the longest retreat in U.S. military history. Temperatures dropped to minus 35 degrees C. Fuel froze. Weapons jammed. At Chosin Reservoir, 30,000 UN troops were surrounded by 120,000 Chinese. The world thought they were doomed. But the Marines fought their way out in a heroic breakout. One Marine famously said, "We're not retreating, we're just advancing in another direction." The Chosin retreat became legend. By mid-1951, the war settled near the original 38th parallel. Millions were dead or wounded. Cities were rubble. Families were torn apart forever. Peace talks dragged on for 2 long years. Soldiers fought vicious battles for hills that changed hands multiple times. And then finally, on July 27, 1953, an armistice was signed. The fighting stopped, but the war never officially ended. Even today, North and South Korea remain technically at war, separated by a heavily armed border. The Korean War shaped the modern world. It forged the U.S.-South Korea alliance. It brought China onto the global stage. It created one of the most dangerous borders on Earth. And it showed how fragile peace can be. A war forgotten by many, but a war that changed everything.